We have Todd Kerns for his unprecedented fifth podcast
Fifth?
appearance, dude. I just went and I
Right.
went and looked back. Your last time on the podcast was July 23rd, 2019. Todd Kerns
Really?
retired. I know it feels
Yeah.
retired BC Lions quarterback Travis Lulay and Real Housewives of Dallas star Carrie Duber last time.
Wow. That 2019. That's like three years ago.
I guess we haven't talked to each other since. Well, I mean, obviously texting and stuff with COVID and stuff, but yeah,
We did that. We did the railway. When was that? Was that back then?
yeah, I think that was right. Like, because I had you maybe about 3 or 4 months later. I had Sean Varro
Right.
do another one of those cheap thrills, and man, fuck, can that kid play? Holy
Yeah.
shit. Sean Varro is just I mean,
It's
he's like a
ridiculous.
master, right? Like, you watch
He
that.
really is.
Yeah.
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 He's so talented.
So thank you, man, for taking some time again.
My pleasure.
Was telling my kids about you on the drive up from Peachland. They're like, "How do you know him?" So I'm saying, I'm wondering, do you remember when we met?
I assume it's through the radio station. Was
It's
it?
through CFOX, yeah. So
Was it when we performed at the radio station or something?
yeah. So what it was, this is a kind of it's a mean thing for me to ask, because I think probably at the time for you're Todd Kerns from Age of Electric, and I was opping Jeff O'Neill's evening show. The first time I met you, you would come in to kind of hang out with the evening guy at CFOX, and I was pushing the buttons off in a show and stuff, and that's the first time I met you.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's one of those weird things where it just kind of feels like we've always known each other. You know, it's like, yeah.
Well, I mean, that goes back to '96, man.
Dude, I know.
So that's 25 years, I guess, right? Just over
25 years. Wow.
Crazy.
Yeah, we're starting to get to that age where when I tell stories, my stories are always like, well, we were playing at this place, it's not there anymore. You know, it's like,
yeah, if you're talking about Vancouver, chances are like, yeah, that joint is not around anymore.
Yeah.
So how did you? I mean, like we're saying just off the top there, like we haven't talked to since COVID started. So how did you fare through the whole ordeal? It feels like we're through it. Mask mandates now. You know, you don't have to wear masks in BC anymore, which is great.
Is that right?
The Vax card, I think, is like April 8th, so it's coming up in the next real soon. We won't have to show the Vax card. So
it's been interesting for us because I mean the States has been interesting from state to state. You know what I mean? So right. I was doing some shows and a lot of fill-in stuff. I did fill-in stuff for Steven Adler. I did fill-in stuff for Corey Taylor because guys kept getting sick, you know,
right,
or something like that, and I would just find myself doing some gigs, and you'd play in one state and it'd be super relaxed. This is like, I'm talking like almost a year ago now, that things were pretty relaxed, and then other states, California and whatnot, would be still pretty stringent on their rules. So and we're currently, I'm currently in Charlotte, North Carolina, and right,
because you're touring right now with Slash and the guys.
Exactly. So we are in a pretty tight COVID bubble as a group, you know what I mean? Just with the intention of like, there's 4 shows left and no one's gone.
No one gets sick.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the reality is at this point, getting sick generally means a relatively mild, thing, but you just don't want to have to derail the entire tour by having somebody go down or whatever. So I've been wearing a mask, just because I don't want to, take the odd chance that something could happen. So, but it's been pretty good. The actual lockdown itself was actually surprisingly healthy for me. It's a weird thing to say. I don't know how you felt about it with the, because the way I live my life is sort of like, and it's starting that way now again, where it's sort of like, okay, tonight I got to talk to Todd. Tomorrow I got to go play in Charlotte, North Carolina. My life is starting to ramp up into that kind of like, as soon as this is done, I go immediately into something else.
So it was nice then to kind of almost like a bit of a break.
it was very strange, to be honest, to have that. It took me a couple weeks before I kind of had that, like, oh, I got to call that guy, I got to return that email, I've got to do this, I got to get that ready, and then it was sort of like, no, you don't have to do any of that because no one's doing anything. So then it's, you know, Tiger King and you're gonna settle in. You know?
Yeah.
And in doing that, it became very difficult to get out of that mode. You know, it became kind of like, you know, when things started to kind of, well, I remember it being kind of like almost this sense of like 2022 is totally jacked. You know, I started doing all kinds of recording. I have a bunch of recording projects coming out because we just sort of said, well, we can still make records or we can still make music. Sure. And then all of a sudden, you know, when people were like 2022, there'll be no touring. And all of a sudden my friends, all these dates started appearing on my Facebook and in my Instagram and whatnot. I'm like, well, what's going on? And I thought, well, they're booking tours. I guess they're praying that it will work out, you know, but
well,
and here we are.
They did that throughout the whole pandemic, really. They were like booking tours and then like, oh, just kidding, that one's canceled, that's postponed, and that's canceled. And I mean, it was very optimistic thinking of them at the very start. Like, I don't know about you, but you know, and that right before you'd played the Cheap Thrills with us, you know, like I think you did December, wasn't it? I think it was a December.
I think it was right around Christmas time. Yeah.
And then it was like March was when Sean Verode played for us as well. And right at the very start of the pandemic, it was like, so sorry, are we supposed to wash our fruit from the grocery store? Like, what are we supposed to be doing here?
It was always very unclear, wasn't it? Yeah,
it was very weird.
It was very strange. And I mean, to be in Vegas, the place that seriously never closes, was surreal, you know, to like, I was doing this show in Vegas with some friends of mine. They have this show called Raiding the Rock Vault, and it's like Howard Leese from Heart and Hugh McDonald from Bon Jovi, you know, all these like, you know, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame types and sort of a supergroup type idea. And they would do a show 5 nights a week. So I kind of went down as kind of like a fill-in guy and ended up being kind of part of the thing for a while. And it was really fun. And, you know, we would do it at the Hard Rock, and then it moved over to the Rio, you know. And, you know, when they sort of kind of gave us so here's the thing, this coronavirus you've been hearing about is officially shutting this thing down for, I mean, I think that they might have put it to me like, it's going to shut down for a couple weeks, see how it goes, you know.
Right.
And then it was like, I remember like, okay, whatever. So we did that night, and the next night it was shut down. So I drove over to the Rio to just grab a couple of things that I'd left for the show. I don't know, a jacket or something. And the whole sign had been removed, like you know, kind of like the, you know, where they would have like Penn and Teller or whatever.
Like the marquee.
Yeah, like the marquee was just sort of stripped out. And I was like, which I suppose they probably do if there's a new act or something, but I'd never seen it like that. And it felt downright apocalyptic, you know what I mean? Like, and then, you know, it went from being, yeah, we're going to take a couple weeks off, to being a few months off, to literally, as you know, a year or whatever it was. So my wife and I would, you know, like I said, for a couple weeks, it was just that weird feeling of like, well, you know, when the Netflix thing comes up and goes, are you still watching? And you're like, I still, yes, I am.
Yeah. Keep going.
Yeah, exactly. And then we would literally go, we would just get in the car and drive around. I go, let's drive down the strip, you know, the Las Vegas world famous strip.
And just dead.
I thought it would be kind of more interesting, but it was actually really kind of depressing, because it's like one of those things. Currently at this very moment, it would be the most lively place on the planet.
Yeah.
So to drive down it and just see like, you know, the fountain at the Bellagio is nothing, you know, and all the signs just said, where there would be like Siegfried and Roy, or, you know, whatever, not those guys obviously, but, you know, Celine Dion or whoever was going to be performing. All they just said was like, you know, we miss you, you know, take care, you know, whatever. And it was just sort of like, and every once in a while you'd see somebody kind of walking, you know, but I drove right down to one end and I just turned around and I said, let's just go home. I didn't like that. It was a very surreal, you know, like that scene in I Am Legend when he's in Times Square, and it's sort of like, you know, it's abandoned, and you get this kind of, wow, that's so interesting. Or like Piccadilly Circus in London for like, what was it, 30 days later or something like that. You're always like, wow, that's such a weird image to imagine something that's, again, so lively to be that dead. So it was very surreal. So,
Yeah.
but Vegas, to its credit, has done, look, what do we have to do? We wear masks, we get vaccinated. Okay, what do we need to do? Boom. So that it's back to whatever degree. I
Well,
think
they were still even like, you know, maybe like a year into the pandemic, they were still doing some like UFC fights and stuff in Vegas, and you know, so there
yeah,
was still some shit happening, but not very much.
I would assume it was probably fairly, you know, tightly regulated with
Oh yeah.
vaccines and whatnot. I don't know, but it's, you know, I think it's been very interesting watching it now. You know, there's always that sort of like, well, back in the COVID situation, I'm like, dude, it's still happening. I'm still living
Back in it. Yeah.
in the parameters that this is a thing, you know.
Yeah.
You know, so it'll be very interesting to witness it kind of, you know, I know that there's a new variant they've been talking about, so, you know, knock on wood that doesn't turn into something serious. But yeah, at this point, I don't think there's any going backwards. Our lockdown is behind us at this point. I don't think,
Right.
I don't foresee that ever being that serious again. I mean, it might be that serious health-wise again, but I just don't see them winding it back to the way it was. Yeah,
Fingers
I mean,
crossed. Yeah. Well,
yeah,
you know,
exactly.
you were mentioning the music and stuff. Like, obviously, that's probably for you anyway, the silver lining within the pandemic bullshit with the last couple of years. So, you know, you guys just released the Slash record.
Yeah.
So, how is that different from making something in the past?
Well, it was different for a number of reasons because we made it in Nashville, which was already unusual in a sense. You know, I mean, like we kind of we took every precaution as far as like, let's get on a bus. We'll just kind of like make sure everybody's negative. You know, get on a bus, go out to Nashville. We stayed in a huge, you know, kind of ranch style, massive place, and then we'll just be like in the studio and back there at the place, at the studio, back there at the place. Food will get ordered in. You know, we'll reduce our chances of getting sick as much as possible. Long story short, like, you know, I think the 6th day of recording, Miles Kennedy was positive. So it was very surreal to, I mean, the other side of it, what makes it so different, I probably should get into, is the fact that we tried to record it as live as possible. And so in reality, this record is very much a live record. There's no click track on it. There's no auto tuning, no sort of, really not any overdubs. I mean, we did end up doing some overdubs, and we had to overdub a little bit of some harmony vocals, and I think Miles might have had to do a lead vocal because he had coronavirus.
Yeah.
But he largely sang with us while we were recording, and 5 days in, we had done you know, a couple songs a day. That was the record. We wanted to make it a short record. Slash has been talking about doing a short record for, you know, World on Fire was 17 songs in 2014 or whatever we released that record.
Yeah.
And you know, basically it was a double record almost, you know. So he's always been talking about, like, you know, like when you think of the old Van Halen 2 or something like that, those were short records, you know. You're like, sometimes 8 songs, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You're wondering how there's not a dud in the bunch. It's just like boom, goes by in 40 to 45 minutes. But so we recorded 10 songs, and then you know, we did everything, all the drums, all the bass, all the guitars, all the and a good lion's share of the vocals were done. And then all of a sudden Miles was sick, and then I got sick. Fitz and I went down the same day, and we just sort of had to hang around. We literally hung around that place for a couple of weeks. I think we had to, back in those days. A lockdown was, you know, or a, you know, quarantine was 2 weeks. So we just sort of sat there watching. Are you still watching? Yeah, I'm still watching this, you know. So it was refreshing to be kind of finally in the studio doing something, because up to that point we had all been, you know, for all intents and purposes, in lockdown, had been, you know, with our families and our wives just kind of like locked in the house. So
yeah,
we had the opportunity to go and do this was was pretty exciting. And then to kind of like go, oh, that's how this is going to go. So we just kind of had to chill, and then we finished it up. Actually, Miles and I did some recording of the vocals at the house that we were staying at. We were actually like, we had to do some harmonies on a couple things, so we just set up a Pro Tools unit there and just sort of recorded the vocals right there and then, and that was it. It was like we really were only in Nashville about 3 weeks. So to make a record in 3 weeks, when you consider, I don't know, Hysteria or Chinese Democracy for that matter, some records can go on.
Yeah. I was texting with you today and saying, we're going to do a little bit different today.
I like that.
I mean, honestly, I think that we've probably done, I don't know, 10 interviews over the course of our friendship.
I think so.
So it's just going to be, from this point on, I just want to do just fan questions for you.
Interesting. Okay.
So Tara on Facebook, if you weren't in Slash's band, which other band would you want to join?
That's so interesting. What's so interesting for me is the fact that, as you know, I'm sort of like, I do my own thing, and it's sort of like, almost like the Slash thing is sort of like the one thing where I kind of went like, well, I can't say no to this. It's like one of those things where, I grew up on the guy's music and I kind of have to be a part of that. That said, I have entertained the idea. I remember somebody asking me like, as a bass player in Slash, what else would be, well, if Jane's Addiction was looking, I would love to do that. Or
if Chris Cheney's not ready, I can take his role for a sec.
Yeah. There's a lot of, based on the idea of like, well, if they needed me to fill in, I'd be happy to do it. Or even Billy Idol. I'm a huge Billy Idol fan, and I thought like that'd be a fun gig, just to play those songs I've been playing since high school, or like junior high. Yeah. All that kind of stuff. I don't know. That's a really weird question, because what other band would I want to be in? I'd probably just have my own band. Honestly, I think that I would probably just do something with my friends like Toque or something like that, and that would be enough to kind of to keep me busy. Because when you start talking about other bands, well, I guess I'd probably play in Paul McCartney's band. So I think that would just, if I'm able to shoot for the moon, let's do that. That'd be great.
Yeah, Paul, no need to bring the bass out. I got it tonight.
yeah, exactly.
I'll do that.
Well, he's one of those guys that he has that, Brian Ray, he sort of handles the guitar. And then when Paul picks up the guitar or plays piano, remember, he does that quite a lot. Suddenly Brian's playing bass. So, and I always go, man, I would crush at that gig. I got that all down. I'm the guy. I'll sing all those harmonies. I got that. But, then you take a hard look at like Paul being 78 years old. And I'm like, well, I don't know how much longer he's going to be out there, but,
right?
He might bury us all. I don't know.
Yeah. It's crazy. Stay on Facebook, Sonny on Facebook. Are Age of Electric going to do something again?
We always talk about it. It's so funny because we had entertained something. I don't remember when that was now. It would have been pre-pandemic, obviously. Sometimes things come up and we talked about it a few times. It's just been a wacky time, with the pandemic and with this Slash record and all that kind of stuff. Probably something I can kind of start thinking about. One thing I was thinking about is that 2023 will mark, I guess 30 years, or I'm trying to think when 93, yeah, 20 or 30 years. I can't remember what exactly it is, but we made the Ugly EP in 93. And then we had the White full-length album came out in 95. So we get to entertain these weird sort of like, landmarks that start creeping up on us, like, because we did the 20th anniversary of Make a Pestaped in 2017. We released a vinyl version with some extra songs because that was the 20th anniversary in 2017.
So those extra songs, were they just kicking around from the sessions or what?
They were around from the sessions. Yeah, we had like I don't remember how many there are now, maybe 4 or 5. I can't remember. They're all great. It was just, how it goes. You record a whole stack of songs and you go, this is the,
some of them got to get cut.
But the fact that we actually had them sort of like sitting around and still in like 2-inch form that we could remix them was
it's amazing. Yeah. What?
So in this position now, I've sort of been only recently told myself like next year is the 30th anniversary of the Ugly EP. We went into Little Mountain Sound in Vancouver, as you know, and with Bob Rock. The whole reason we moved to Vancouver in '92 was to work with Bob Rock, the producer.
Yeah.
To Little Mountain Sound, and we recorded a whole bunch of music, and he was going to try and get us signed and all that kind of stuff, and it never really happened. While we were recording that, Aerosmith was working on Get a Grip. Bon Jovi came in and did Keep the Faith. Motley Crue came in just as we were leaving to do the record with Karabi. So it was a very sort of like, whirlwind of like, wow, Steven Tyler just comes into your room and you guys got tambourines, like what? In full Steven Tyler gear. He's never wearing like sweats and a ponytail. He's always Steven Tyler.
Yeah.
But yeah, so now that
scarf around the neck, looking for some tambourines.
Yeah, exactly. Like the door opens and a smoke machine or something, it's going. But next year being, the anniversary of that EP, I try to use these things as a way of needling everybody. Like, hey, what do you think? What do you think? We should maybe do something about this. And it's very possible we might be able to get something happy with it. I don't know that there's any extra material for that, but who knows? It might be just kind of fun to treat it as a reason to go out and play some shows.
Oh hell yeah! Sounds like a start to finish album tour kind of thing,
Yeah, exactly.
I love Mike's question. He goes, yeah, you got the star on BC's Walk of Fame. From everything you've accomplished, which do you think makes you most deserving of that honor?
Oh man. Well, half the time, that kind of stuff, you feel really fraudulent about it half the time. You're kind of like, oh man, it's like, you kind of feel like, well, you feel very appreciative of, but there's sometimes you just kind of go, oh man, I don't know if, that is a really surreal thing to me. I mean, honestly, to this day, a friend of mine, the band Dragon Force just played the Commodore. And my friend goes, yeah, we played the Commodore. I go, dude, my star's just down the street. And he goes, what? And I was like, it's just a weird thing to kind of just bring up, but it is.
Right, yeah.
I'm by the Roxy, I don't know, actually. I think in a lot of ways, I think when it comes to Vancouver, I think things like Age of Electric and all that kind of stuff, I think they treated it all as a sort of, my whole career, I suppose, and everything that I've been doing that sort of somehow warrants me being next to Bryan Adams or Colin James or Sarah McLachlan or whoever else. It's it's greatly appreciated, but it's super surreal. But I think that my heart still always belongs in Vancouver. Every time I go back, that is, as much as growing up in Saskatchewan, all those major years of my life were spent in Vancouver. To the point now where I'm sure you're not unlike me with my kids, and I go, this used to be that, and that used to be this. This was never here, Yeah,
totally.
I'm that guy now. It's like, so it feels amazing. But I know that, and I keep saying this to my wife, and I think it's one of those interesting things that I kind of feel like I have the audacity to keep thinking like that. I don't think the big thing has really happened yet. It's a weird thing to say at this point in my life, but I still feel like there's still more to do. And I think that's important. You know what I mean? I think it's important to feel that way, because after a while, I just kind of imagine, just going through the motions of it all, but and not really having much to say. So in a lot of ways, during the lockdown, it sort of had me writing a lot and working a lot with other people. And it kind of really opened up another part of my brain of like, you know what? The whole reason we do this is to make music. And to Slash's credit too, he's sort of like, he very easily could just be like phoning it in and playing guitar and being like, whatever. But he's very driven to make new music and to do new things and break new ground. He really has no reason to, but he does it all the time. I think that's the true sign of being an artist, if I may throw the word around. But like I say, well, I guess the star, I guess is sort of an overview of the career, but I still feel like there's more to come.
Yeah. It's all about longevity for that star, I think, personally. I mean, there's so many things that you've done over the years that are just, they're all impressive on their own, all have merit, right?
Well, I appreciate that. And we just mentioned, guys like McCartney. I think like that's still a long ways away. A lot of things are going to happen in the next 30 years. I mean, like I'm still going to be going. I remember having a conversation with somebody talking about like, like my father, I think he retired at like 55. I remember thinking, it's so weird to imagine like, thank God I'm going to stop working at this thing. When I think to myself, I go, don't feel that way about my work. It's like, people go like, you'll end up working your whole life. And I go, well, please, I hope so. I hope I'm like, 75 going like, got to go down to the airport. We're going to get on the plane and go to wherever and play some shows. It's like, bring it on.
Yeah. Yeah. Most people aren't lucky like that though, right?
No, I know.
All right. So West Coast Vibe on Twitter goes, ask Todd, what's the craziest thing he's seen on stage while touring?
Craziest thing I've seen on stage. Well, just the other night, Slash split his pants. And they had to like gaff tape him all up. It was the funniest thing. It was like, I was like, what's going on over there? Because we kept doing this, the monitor guy kept saying in our ears, like, just 1 second, guys, just 1 second. We're like, the hell's going on over there? Like, oh, you go back, just 1 more second, guys. And just like gaff taping him all up. We've seen things I've seen on stage. I mean, a lot of it's just normal stuff. That once in Italy, back in like 2011, I think maybe, I was way over on stage right, my side of the stage, and Slash was way over on stage left. We were in Milan, Italy, which is a surreal thing to even say that I'm actually familiar with,
right,
where to get something to eat in Milan, Italy. But I'm doing my thing, yeah, and I just gonna see this out of the corner of my eye, and then I just see like, basically what happened was some large guy had just wandered up the ramp. I don't know, he must have come from the audience and just walked on stage, and he was gonna grab Slash, I assume as some sort of, out of affectation or I don't think it was like, I'm going to squash him or something. It was just kind of like, but then the security came and our security guy just tackled him right into the pit, like right off the stage down in the pit. And Slash went boing, and he kind of just went, and he kept playing, but they'd broken part of his guitar, and he was like, it was the middle of Sweet Child of Mine. I was just about to do the solo, and he just kind of like, the tech hands him a new guitar, and he just finished the song. But which says everything about Slash. It's just like,
right,
things are exploding around him, and he's just kind of like keeps doing his thing. That would certainly be up there. I've seen it. I've seen a few occasions where people have tried to storm the stage, which is always kind of like,
don't do that.
You don't do that. I kind of always feel like, I understand that 99% of the time that is done out of like love, right. But there is a huge concern, dime bags, stuff like that. I mean,
after
like
dime, yeah,
it's like, that's just not cool anymore. So unfortunately, security gets very serious about it. And I don't want to see anybody get hurt, but it's like, it's more like just people trying to defend us, I suppose.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
Yeah. No, I can't think of anything beyond stuff like that. I mean, I've been on stage. I tell Frank is our guitar player, plays in Wolfgang's band Mammoth WVH.
Yeah.
And he's like much younger than us. So when I'm just sort of sitting around telling war stories, it's kind of like, for a guy who was 23 years old, who ended up in Slash's band, and now he plays in Wolfgang's band, I'm like telling him, stories of like playing in Camrose, Alberta, or Red Deer and stuff, and, dodging beer bottles as we're trying to play. I was like trying to play. I was like, and people didn't necessarily always want to see you play music. That's part of what makes you kind of like, gets that thick skin and the ability to kind of get on stage. You're like, do you get nervous when you go on stage? I'm like, no, I don't get nervous. I mean, it's like, I had to go on stage when, there was bikers that were going to kill us in the audience, that kind of thing. It's like, just, no, these days it's pretty easy just to get up on stage and play some songs.
Right. Chris goes, what's your favorite Age of Electric memory from the 90s?
you know, it's so funny. That's another thing that I talk a lot about, is the 90s was such a specific time. Like, we weren't even like, because the alternative thing was so anti-rock star in a way, you weren't even really supposed to celebrate the fact that you were doing well. You know, it was almost kind of like supposed to be like almost an ironic kind of like, you know, yeah, you know, awesome. Because we, you know, you'd be driving around and your songs would come on the radio all the time. And you always see in the movies, like, you know, people going like, no way, you know, like that thing you do, or like one of those movies, you know, and we would just be kind of like, I think we'd sort of clawed and scratched and fought our way so far that by the time we got played on the radio, it felt like, oh, thank God, you know, kind of just felt more like, oh, okay, well, that was for something, you know. Although it was certainly celebratory. A lot of my memories, I think, just kind of like, you know, there's so many great memories. I mean, I tell Kurt Dahl stories all the time. Again, Frank and those guys don't know who Kurt Dahl is, the drummer from Age of Electric, but I have so many funny stories about him that I just kind of put them out there as, you know, one time on Kurt's birthday, he was telling me, you know, we used to drink back then. And he was sort of standing there backstage holding a scotch, saying like, I'm switching to the scotch now because the beer's making me fat. And I'm kind of like, okay, you know, whatever. And then that night on stage, Zuckerbaby was opening for us. I don't know if you remember those guys from Calgary, good friends of ours.
Yeah.
That night on stage, I'm standing out front, and like Kurt's behind me, and I can hear cymbals being missed and things, you know. I go, I kind of turn around and he looks at me and just kind of, couldn't really tell what he was saying, but he was basically saying, I'm wasted. You know, we're top of the music. And I was just kind of like, oh boy, you know, it's like song one, you know, like,
Yeah. Scotch was a bad idea.
Scotch was a bad call. I remember he looks over at Reed, but between songs, Reed Shimizawa, the guitar player for Zuckerbaby, who's been an old friend of ours. And he looks over at Reed and he goes, how am I doing? I guess he was just looking to see, like, am I as bad as I feel like I'm doing? How am I doing? And Reed just goes, and we were like, and we got through it. I mean, honestly, I've seen my brother so drunk he was like spitting on stage, you know, like ready to like hurl. And I'm like, you know, usually when I'm at a point like when I'm about to hurl, it's like I'm not standing in front of an audience finishing a show, you know.
Right.
But those guys, you know, the two of them especially could just, the Toxic Twins could go and go and go. This is 1,000 years ago.
A long time ago. They're 90s.
Yeah. That's not even like that's just like the tip of an iceberg of a million stories about the Age of Electric. Oddly enough, one of the weirdest stories that I always remember is our very final show was at Cops Coliseum in Hamilton. And we had clawed and scratched our way up to play these kind of places. You know, we were opening for Our Lady Peace. And I remember, you know, you're playing to an audience that is largely OLP's crowd, you know, but there were pockets of our people like, yay. I remember looking way up in the stands and seeing some kind of AOE
nice
banner or whatever, and being like,
yeah.
Wow, thank you. And then just and in my mind thinking to myself, you people have no idea. This is like kind of our last show, even though it wasn't really kind of like we're breaking up. It was just kind of like, this needs to go on a hiatus for a while. And it did for like 15, 16, 17 years like that. So that's kind of a bittersweet one, but I do always remember that. It's such a big chunk of my life. Like, it feels like it was about 10 years all told, maybe a little more. But you know, it's a giant chunk of that specific part of your life, from basically a kid into adulthood. And, you know, I had kids along the way, and, you know, we all kind of, you know, moved to Vancouver and all that stuff.
And with it being, you know, the Kern brothers, the Dahl brothers.
Yeah.
Like, do you think that there's like a leg up for those style of bands like that, like a I don't know, Nickelback and AC/DC and, you know, Kings of Leon and Heart and all that?
Oasis,
where there's, you know, brothers or sisters and together in bands. You think, like, is there some sort of like advantage to that?
Well, I would imagine you probably you get right past the idea of looking for people to play with. I mean,
yes, because you've been playing with them since
yeah.
6 years old.
Trying to put a band together, you've at least got one other person to kind of do that with. It is funny because people always ask me that, like, some young kid, what should I do to try and find some people to play with? And I always go, oh, I never really think about that because it just sort of happens so organically. But yeah, I think that, there would be something to be said about, like, certain sibling relationships, like the young brothers, Malcolm and Angus, seem to be really symbiotic and like really have a thing, And then you had the Oasis brothers and the Kinks and guys like that who couldn't stand each other, the Black Crowes,
right.
And which is also part of their dynamic, what I mean? But I don't know. It's certainly, there's some magic there, and there's probably a lot of unspoken stuff. You don't really need to get into a lot of, like, even with music. It happens with musicians too, where you just get to a point where you don't really have to kind of go into detail of what you're talking about. You just know because you've been together all these years.
Yeah. Like, did you write songs in age quicker or easier than any other bands, you think?
No, not at all.
No.
The weirdest thing is that we were all kids, and I think the guys would probably hate me to say this, but we were all kids that just grew up on rock and roll, and we loved, all of it. I feel fortunate enough to be from Saskatchewan and to especially be from a small town where we didn't really have anybody telling us, you have to like punk rock, or you have to like heavy metal, or you have to like pop, you have to like new wave. We just kind of liked all of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, you're talking about like just some kids who loved Kiss, and my brother wanted to be Steve Harris from Iron Maiden, and Ryan Dahl he loved Randy Rhoads as a kid, and we all kind of came from, the hard rock kind of long hair background. And then it sort of just slowly changed into the 90s and the alternative thing and all that kind of stuff. And then it became a lot more like I felt like even though we really sort of took full charge of what we were doing, there was always a sort of feeling of like, once you kind of get in the game of making music, it's a total thing about like, well, now you got to think about how you not only just get successful, but stay successful. And that's not really what the Age of Electric was about for the first, decade of just trying to struggle, or 8 years or whatever, to struggle to get to where we got. And then you get to a point where, you become successful, and then it's sort of, that's when it gets challenging. It's almost kind of like it's all for one and one for all, and then things start to get kind of weird. Yeah.
Yes.
Which is
all right. We'll stay with the Age of Electric for a sec here. Bob on Facebook goes, so the video for Ugly was shot in one consecutive sequence. How many takes did you guys have to do to nail that?
Well, technically it was shot in 3 sequences, because I think it's 3, because we were at the it's shot at the Fort Garry in Winnipeg, but we were staying in this place called the North Centre Inn in Calgary. It's not there anymore.
Yes. Hey-o.
Hey-o, but it had one of those, like, where the hallways all kind of went around, and we were always trying to think of ways to make videos, because we'd made a couple of videos at that point, and we knew that all the money, this is back before you could just do it with your phone. You can make better quality videos with your phone these days. But
yeah,
we knew that a lot of money goes into the editing of it, and that was kind of like, so we can get the film, we can get the camera. If we can shoot the stuff and edit as little as possible, then we save ourselves tons of money. So with only 2 edits in the Ugly video, that was the whole idea. So I was standing in the hotel, and I thought, it was like all squared, like it was, but all just an ongoing hallway, really. And that was the initial thought of like, what if we shot the video like, in an artsy way, and alternative, music was very big at the time. And we could just kind of keep it going, just kind of keep a camera going all the way around, and have, how the people running by, doing all kinds of things. And then when we got it to Derek Horn, the guy who directed the video, he actually came up with the idea of the rooms that within the Fort Garry, you could go into the rooms, and the rooms connected, then go out of the rooms, all that kind of stuff too. So it got even more involved then. And it goes into about, I'm trying to figure out when we actually, the first edit, oddly enough, Alex Panovich, who just had a run in what was that show called? Hawkeye on Disney Plus, the Avengers series. He's in that series. He is a guy from Winnipeg, and there's a scene where we go into this bathroom and there's somebody in the shower. I don't even know what the hell he was doing in the shower. He's just cleaning it or something, but he puts his hand up to the camera, and then that was the first edit. So then the next scene was some sort of like removal of something. I can't remember. I'd have to look at the video now. So if you watch it now, you'll see like the removal of that is into the next scene, and we shot that. So it was really involved. The hardest part of it, honestly, was we shot it like they were renovating that floor. And I don't know who they convinced to allow us to do that, because there was hundreds of us up there. I was like, it was basically, and it went on all night, and it was basically a party. And people were like partying and, you know, the whole time. And the fact that we were able to actually get anything done, you know, I'm sure we drove Derek crazy, is shocking. But you know, he had it all mapped out. And then the final scene is Robin Black, who is now a commentary for MMA stuff. Yep. He was a singer in a band called
Robin Black and the Intergalactic Rock Stars.
That's right. Yep. But before that, he was in a band called the Ballroom Zombies.
Oh.
And so in the video, when you watch the ugly video, he's like getting married to our sound guy, Mike, who is wearing a wedding dress. And Mike was this kind of like, you know, bikery looking kind of cat. And then they just kind of like walk into a door or something like that. And then the cut happens. And then the next day we went and shot some live footage at a venue in Winnipeg. I don't remember where it was, but and that's where at the end of the video we go into a live performance kind of thing. So very clever, very well done, especially for an idea of like, well, what if we did this, you know, with like how could we save money doing this?
Yeah, all in trying to save a couple bucks.
And that's kind of what I think that Much Music kind of, you know, looked at it and thought, wow, that's very creative. Let's give that a chance, you know.
Yeah, and a good song. So
yeah, the song got a lot of love.
Yeah, and probably by the time you make the video, there's probably a ton of Canadian radio stations that are already playing Ugly.
I think so. I remember it being kind of you know, like, you know, we had moved to Vancouver. We had recorded that stuff on the Ugly EP, as I mentioned, with Bob Rock and all that. And then we did, you know, we did the kind of, we had to hire a radio tracker guy and all that kind of stuff. Very, very grown up stuff. You know, kind of like, what? We have to do what? You know, because people do that all the time. People do it all the time now, like in Toque and all that kind of stuff. We're always like, well, we'd have to hire a tracker. And I remember at the time, it nearly killed us how much it cost to hire a radio tracker. And I'm sure it's exponentially more now. So
probably,
you know, so, but it, you know, it got added and, you know, and did very well for us. And then the video did really well. And that led to everything else, you know, that went along with that.
Yeah. Todd, I hilariously said, it'll be a quick one this time, 15-20 minutes. We're like 40 minutes in.
That's my fault.
Aaliyah on Facebook, now you mentioned Toque, she goes, and this isn't a question, she just goes, tell Todd that Toque needs to play the Caribou Rocks for the North in PG this August.
Prince George. I'd love to, honestly. I mean, we had so many things on the calendar that have been getting bounced back since 2020, as you can imagine, you know. So we have a bunch of stuff coming up this year. I don't think Prince George is on there, unfortunately, but I would love to. I mean, I played Prince George back in 89 for the first time, maybe 88, maybe 87. I don't even remember, but I was a kid. I'll say probably 87, 86, 87, somewhere in that area.
Yeah.
I don't remember. It was a place called The Generator, I think. But
yes. Be ready to fight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But Age of Electric played up there a few times later on too. But I would love to. It'd be great. Bring it on.
Yeah.
I'll put it to the gang.
I'll rip a few out and then we'll wrap it up here. Dr. Cheesy McTits MD on Twitter.
Okay.
Goes, let's settle this debate once and for all. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
Oh my God. No, I think a hot dog is a hot dog. you know, I've been hearing that kind of here and there, and I go, well, I mean, I suppose if you want to kind of, there's something in the middle of two pieces of bread, but I don't know. I think a hot dog's a hot dog. It's sort of a totally
its own thing.
If it was two slices of bread, then I'd be like, okay, well, let's have that conversation. But it just seems like, no, I mean, a hamburger's a hamburger. Is a hamburger a sandwich? I guess it is kind of a hamburger sandwich. I don't know, but you know, a hamburger's a hamburger, hot dog's a hot dog, and a sandwich is a sandwich. And you can get a million different kinds of sandwiches.
There you go, doctor. There you go, Dr. Cheese Tits.
Thank you,
or McTits, or whatever it is. Karen goes, what's the worst job that Todd's had?
Worst job? I've had a lot of jobs, you know. I mean, when I was younger, we painted houses. That was kind of, I would say that I don't really have necessarily negative memories about that, but I do remember, oddly enough, you know, in the early phases of Ugly getting added to the radio and getting played on CFOX, you know, I was still painting houses whenever I, you know, in the summertime, if I could. And I'll never forget my brother and I both being up on top of a, you know, death-defying painting something, and somebody driving by like, all I hear is ugly. And I was like, I looked at my brother, I go, what the hell's wrong with this picture? You know,
yeah.
You know, a week later we were on the road doing whatever we were doing. But yeah, you know, it's like I don't really have anything. There's a great line in the song God Gave Rock and Roll to You, the Kiss song, which is originally an Argent song. I don't know if you knew that, but
no, really.
But Kiss rewrote a bunch of it, so it's called God Gave Rock and Roll to You Too. But there's a great line in that song that Zach, the guy that I play in Bruce Kulick's band, he plays in Corey Taylor's band from Slipknot.
Zach
Throne, yeah.
Throne.
Who's a bit of a Vancouver guy too. He was out there shooting. He shot a TV show called The Heights up there. He's from LA, but he lived in Vancouver for a long time, doing some TV and radio and TV and voiceover stuff, I think. Okay. Anyway, cool. we play that song together, and I always say that line always makes me shudder. The line goes, if you want to be a singer or play guitar, man, you got to sweat or you won't get far, because it's never too late to work 9 to 5. And I always kind of go, ooh, it's kind of, because that is so true. You know, you have so many like stories of guys who, you know, who had a moment, you know, had a hit song and one hit wonder, and then it's over, you know. So, you know, to be doing this as long as I've been doing it, and, you know, you have your ups and you have your downs. You know, I suppose if one day the phone stops ringing, it's time to go, and it's never too late to work 9 to 5, you know. So, yeah. You know, it's no one's too good to have to go and get a job, you know, and I feel very much the same way. But, you know, I look back on it and I'm kind of like, yeah, you know, some of those jobs are not things I would want to still be doing, but I wouldn't be doing them still anyway, because I would have had to figure something else out to be a grown up and support a family.
or fall to your death.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, Todd, last one. Brian goes, what's the best prank that he's been involved in?
Prank? I haven't been involved in. I'm not really a pranky guy. I'm trying to think if there's been any sort of pranks. I honestly can't think of any.
And that's fine.
And you know what? There used to be a lot of like shenanigans when we were younger, where, you know, someone would be in the shower and there would be like, you know, just go down to the, you know, every crappy hotel has a ice machine down the thing, and which is in reality, to throw hard ice at somebody, whether they're in the shower or not, isn't so much about it being cold as much as it's hard rocks being thrown on you. But those were the kind of jokes, or freezing cold water or that kind of stuff, that, you know, that kind of shenanigans. But actual like pranks where there's like some sort of thought put into it and that kind of thing, no, I don't think we were really smart enough or just cared enough to go through that entire process.
Yeah. Too much effort.
It's just too much effort. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the rest of the next couple of months looking like for you?
Well, we are in Charlotte. We go from Charlotte to Charleston to, I think, Tampa, and we end up in Orlando, Florida, and that's it. And then I go home, and I'm pretty thankful to go home and not have too much on my plate. I got, like I said, I have a couple recordings going on. I have a project that myself and Will from Evanescence, we have a project that we're putting out, a record this year, and that was really fun. Like, it was another one of those COVID things. I don't know if you ever heard the record I did called Minefield I did last year, but me and some guy, Ace Frehley's band, literally just sent tracks around and recorded shit and just sent it around. It was so much fun and turned out great. Like, honestly, like,
well, I think it was one of the, what was one of the songs called Alone Together?
That's the one. Yeah.
And that was a fucking deadly song, man.
Thank you. Yeah. It's such a weird thing because, you know, the music business is so strange these days. And, you know, as far as like the whole thing about the pandemic that was so staggering was the fact that, you know, the record industry itself is really tough. Like, to make money from selling records is kind of not a thing anymore unless you're in that other bracket of,
unless you're Foo Fighters or Pearl Jam
or Jay-Z or you know, Beyonce or
Rolling Stones.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, most bands are making their money on the road, and that's why you'll see the Stones and Aerosmith and Kiss still out playing shows, because that's where the money is. And so when you take the road away, then it's kind of like, well, now what? But it hasn't really changed anything in my mind about making music. You know, I mean, I think it sort of makes you kind of like go, well, is there really a reason to make music? But I kind of go, well, there's always a reason to make music. And I think the fact that the internet and all that kind of exists to at least get it out to people. You know, I mean, you may have a very interesting, you know, conversation on how you get paid for that, but most people are making records these days just as an excuse to go out and play on the road. But I think it's, you know, it's, to me, it's like, I'm just going to keep making music. You know, I'm just going to keep doing it until
no one cares anymore.
No one cares anymore. Yeah. Or, you know, it's sort of like I made an acoustic record back in 2013 when it was 100% just kind of like for the people who follow me. And, you know, and I suppose I probably could have done all that stuff and found, you know, I just did it independently, and I could have tried to chase down a label and a radio tracker and all that kind of stuff. But I just sort of, you know, I just wanted to make music, and I just felt like I have all these songs and I want to do something with it. I just didn't feel like, and there also becomes a thing of like keeping away from the machine, you know, the process of going and making a record with A&R guy and producer and all these different people coming in and, you know, with their 2 cents. And sometimes you just want to make music because I just want to make music, you know, and because it's not really something that you hold your breath about as far as like, you know, I mean, to make millions and millions of dollars making records anymore. It's like, to me, it's like, well, I'll be on the road. I always remember at the end of the Dennis Quaid movie about Jerry Lee Lewis, Great Ball of Fire. I don't remember what the exact quote was at the end of the movie, but I always remember it said something like, you know, because there's always that kind of epilogue of like, this person went on to do that, and this person went on to do this. And then I remember at the very end, it said something like, and Jerry Lee Lewis is playing somewhere tonight. And I remember thinking, wow, that's the coolest thing I've ever heard. You know, so, you know, like, Jerry Lee
and
Lewis
he's still doing it right now.
And he's doing it right now. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's such a, I just thought that was like the most, I thought that was the coolest thing to think to yourself, like, that's kind of all I want, is to be able to be like, because I know that there are people who go like, that don't even know who I am. You know what I mean? I think that's perfectly cool. And I know that there's somebody else going like, what do you mean you don't know who he is? He's done this and this, and then, you know. So I kind of feel, you know, I feel perfectly okay with the fact that there's some people who don't have a clue, and some people are very passionate about it. And I'm kind of like some of them. And like I said, there's still more to come. And I really feel like that's the most interesting thing about this ride, you know, is that it's never too late to do something, just to do something great. So just keep clawing away and scratching away and making music. This year, like when I get out of this, it's more into just kind of like, there's a whole bunch of Toque stuff coming up, Toque activity. We got some Bruce Kulick activity and a bunch of recording and stuff like that I got with different projects that will start to present itself as well. There's talk of 2023 trying to get over to Europe with Slash, Australia, that kind of stuff. So again, I don't know. That's, you know, I don't even think that far in advance. It's like, I might be dead by then. I don't know.
Right, it's too far, man. It's like it's a year away. So this stuff you're doing with Wes from Evanescence, Is there a
Will,
name on that project? Have you got?
Not officially yet. No, again, it's another one of those things that started off with stuff being sent back and forth, and what about this and what about that, and and it just sort of happens. I think
That's
it's
cool.
really fun. It's really fun for me. I mean, because you get to a point where you're like, well, am I doing too much? Like, am I putting? And I kind of feel like not. I don't feel that way. I feel like there's no such thing as doing too much, like making too much music. I'm kind of like,
Right.
Let's just get it out there and enjoy it. And one day I'll be too old to do this anymore, and I'll look back and go, wow, I did a lot of stuff. That's kind of how I feel about it. So it's pretty great though. What we've been doing is pretty rocking, and I think it's again, it's one of those things where he's in Evanescence, and we're all both very busy, so who knows if we'll ever get a chance to actually do anything with it. But it's it's fun to be able to make projects. Like I always think of all these heroes of ours who've done, like, remember that weird project Jeff Beck with Carmen Appice and then like there was a weird record that Sammy Hagar did with Neil Schon back in the 80s, and I kind of think to myself, yeah, that was cool. Like that kind of stuff's kind of fun. And I don't really see. I always kind of think if there's no reason to say no, then I'm kind of like, yeah, that sounds like fun. Let's do it. If we can make it work in our schedules, let's do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like you made tonight. Always good to see you, buddy. Good to see you.
You too, man. I'm hoping to be up there in the spring, so I'll definitely be looking you up.
Okay, sounds good.
For a couch to sleep on. Just kidding.
Yeah. What are you, a drummer suddenly? You are at Todd Kerns on Twitter. Thank you again for jumping on, Todd, and we'll see you soon. Good to talk to you, man.
Take care. Big love.